The world outside this door is vast, noisy and hurried. But you are not here for that world tonight. You are here to step across a threshold, not into different place, but into different time. Imagine the year is M1045. The air is crisp, carrying the sharp, sweet scent of damp heather and the distant cooling breath of the Atlantic. You are standing in the western Highlands of Scotland, at an hour where the daylight is beginning to surrender to the velvet blue of twilight. Before you stands a brackhouse, a structure not built upon the land, but seemingly grown from it. Its walls are thick, double-layered stone filled with earth, holding the warmth of generations. The roof thatched with heather and tied down with ropes of twist straw to defy the Highland gales, curves softly, blending perfectly with the slope of the hill behind it. You reach out. The door is low, demand a humble bow as you enter. As you step inside, the weight of the outside world falls away, replaced by a profound, ancient stillness. The first thing that greets you is the smell, a complex aroma of smouldering peat, dried grasses, and the faint, earthy scent of livestock sheltered under the same roof. It is a scent that speaks of survival, of comfort, and of an unbreakable bond between a family and their home. Your eyes take a moment to adjust to the dimness. There is no electric glare here, only the deep, pulsing orange of the central hearth, where a fire of peat bricks burns with a steady, hypnotic rhythm. There are no kings here tonight, no generals plotting maps, and no sound of distant drums of war. There is only the low crackle of the fire, the rhythmic drip of water against a stone outside, and the soft, steady breathing of a household settling in the evening. You are not a visitor in the traditional sense. You are a witness to a way of life that has existed for centuries, a cycle of labour and rest that is, as constant as the rising and setting of the sun. You find a place in the shadowed corner, away from the circle of activity, where you can simply watch the hours unfold. As we sit here, let the modern world fade in the background. Let the tension in your shoulders loosen with every flicker of the hearth. You have come to this place to learn, to reflect, and to find a moment of peace in a world that is about to be changed forever. We are here in the heart of M1045 to observe the quiet dignity of a Highland home. The channel Sleepy History with Benedict is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. As your vision sharpens in the dim amber, tinted light, you begin to truly see the room that holds you. A Scottish brackhouse is not merely a building, it is a living vessel. Notice the walls. They are exceptionally thick, nearly a metre wide, constructed from dry stone and packed with a core of earth and peat. These walls do not just support the roof, they act as a thermal mass, absorbing the heat of the fire during the day and radiating it back in the space throughout the long, cold Highland night. Look up toward the rafters. There is no chimney in the conventional sense. The smoke from the central hearth rises slowly, curling toward the apex of the heather, thatched roof, filtering through the thatch itself before drifting out in the night air. This process, while it might seem strange to modernize, serves a vital purpose. The smoke permeates the thatch, acting as a natural preservative and insecticide, keeping the roof structure sturdy and free from rot for decades. It is a brilliant, intuitive form of engineering, born from necessity and perfected by centuries of observation. The floor beneath you is not polished wood or stone tile, it is the earth itself, packed down hard by countless footsteps. The fire occupies the very centre of this living space, the heart of the home. It is a sacred circle, defined by a ring of stones, where the boundaries between the outside elements and the inner sanctuary are negotiated. Outside, the wind may howl across the glen, whipping the bracken and chilling the mountain streams, but here the fire is a defiant, warm promise. Everything in this house is placed with intention. The arrangement of the room is dictated by the movement of the sun and the requirements of the family's daily tasks. To the sides, away from the direct reach of the heat, are the sleeping areas, the box beds. These are small, wooden, enclosed compartments that provide privacy and warmth, shielding the sleepers from the draughts that inevitably navigate their way through the door. Listen closely. Beyond the fire, you can hear the faint, low murmur of the byre, the area at the lower end of the house where the cattle are kept. In these high glens, the livestock were more than property. They were the lifeline of the household. By housing them under the same roof, the family ensured the safety of their animals from both predators and the biting cold, while the body heat of the cattle helped to regulate the temperature of the entire building. It is a symbiotic existence, a silent agreement where human and animal life share the same protective shell. You are sitting in a space that breathes, a space that understands the rhythms of the earth, and as you watch the smoke drift gently upward, you can almost feel the house itself sighing with the comfort of being occupied and alive. In the soft, shifting shadows, a figure moves with a quiet, practiced grace. This is the woman of the house. Her presence is the anchor of this room. While the man of the house has spent his day in the fields or attending to the livestock on the slopes, her world has been defined by the intimate, unceasing demands of the hearth. She is not merely cooking, she is managing the very height of the family. Observe her hands. They are calloused, stained by the work of the day, yet they move with a tenderness that suggests a deep familiarity with every object in this room. She approaches the central fire. With a long iron tongue, she adjusts a peat brick, nudging it slightly to catch a fresher edge of the ember. The fire reacts, sending a soft bloom of light across her face. It is a face etched with the lines of resilience, lines that speak of winters endured, births attended to, and the quiet patience required to keep a family fed and warm in a land that is often different to human struggle. She moves to the kettle, a large heavy iron vessel that has been suspended over the fire for as long as anyone can remember. It is the repository of the household's sustenance. As she lifts the lid, a plume of steam rises, filling the air with the scent of water and grain. She adds a handful of dried herbs, gathered from the hillsides during the brief, fleeting summer, adding a note of earth and spice to the evening broth. Every motion she makes is efficient. There is no movement, not in fuel, not in food. She knows exactly how long a peat brick will burn before it needs to be turned, and she knows the subtle shift in the kettle's bubble that signals the water is at the perfect temperature. To watch her is to understand the true meaning of domesticity in the 8th century. It was not a life of luxury, it was a life of profound, high-stakes competence. She is the guardian of the fire, the one who ensures that when the night grows truly cold, the hearth remains a beacon of life. She turns to small, low table, her movements unhurried, as if she is dancing to a rhythm that only she can hear. In this space, the division between labour and rest is thin. Work is done with a sense of ceremony, and rest is earned through the sweat of one's brow. As she pauses for a moment at the dark low door, you see a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, but a quiet watchful awareness of the world outside, and a deep enduring pride in the sanctuary she maintains within. Beside the wall, interface catch the golden glow of the fire, sits a heavy iron-bound wooden chest. It is perhaps the most important object in the entire house. This is not just a container for clothes or linens, It is a repository of the family's history. Generations of hands have smoothed the grain of its oak lid, and generations of eyes have watched it hold the weight of their legacy. The chest was crafted by the man who now rests on the bench nearby. He was a man of the timber and the soil, a carpenter who understood that beauty was found in utility. He built this piece as part of a daughter's dowry, a promise of stability for a new life. Throughout the decades, it has travelled across the glens, served as a makeshift table, a seat for the weary, and a sanctuary for the family's most precious belongings, the salt, the spare wool, the hand-woven fabrics that keep the winter bite at bay. You watch as the woman of the house approaches it now. She lifts the lid. It creaks with a deep resonant groan that seems to echo the history of the house itself. Inside there is a neatly folded plaid, the pattern subtle, dyed with the lichen and roots of the very glen that surrounds you. As she unfolds it, a small puff of dust and the scent of aged wood rise in the firelight. This is not just fabric. It is a story of craft, of long silent hours spent at the loom during the dead of winter, turning raw fleece into something that can protect a loved one. There is a profound sense of continuity here, in a world where the future is often uncertain and the seasons are harsh. These objects provide a tether to the past. They remind the family that they are not alone in their struggle. They are part of a long, unbroken chain of survival. Every dent in the wood, every worn-down corner of the iron hinge is a testament to the lives that have flourished and faded within these walls. The room remembers. It holds the laughter of children who have grown and gone, the whispered prayers of those who have passed on, and the quiet resolve of those who remain. As you sit in the silence, listening to the fire and the settling of the timbers, you realize that this house is a living memory. The objects within it are not just belonging. They are the witnesses to a legacy that persists despite the changing tides of the outside world. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Benedict, are fictional, thoughtfully crafted around historical themes inspired by real events, figures and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The content does not represent real individuals, actual events or documented cases. Any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. Shift your attention now, ever so slightly, away from the warmth of the central hearth toward the darker, lower end of the dwelling. Here, the floor transitions from the packed earth of the living space to the slightly sunken area known as the byre. It is here that the true pulse of the household's economy beats. You can hear the soft rhythmic shifting of hooves and the low, contented huffing of breath. This is the home of their cattle, the creatures that provide the milk, the hide, and the very foundation of survival in this rugged terrain. In the 8th century Highlands, a man's wealth and a family's security were measured not in gold or coin, but in the number of head of cattle they could guide through the brutal winter. These animals are treated with a reverence that borders on the familial. The woman of the house, before the evening draws to a close, often carries a small bundle of sweet dried grass to the byre. She knows each animal by name, and they, in turn, recognize the cadence of her footsteps. There is no distance here, only a shared existence. The warmth radiating from their large, gentle bodies drifts in the living space, a silent living furnace that tempers the mountain chill. Think for a moment about this connection. In our modern disconnected lives, we have forgotten the sound of animals breathing in the next room. A sound that has signalled safety for humanity for thousands of years. It is a reminder of the fragility of life and the immense work required to sustain it. If you are finding peace in these descriptions and wish to continue this journey, through the quiet corners of history, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us preserve these stories and share them with others who may also be seeking a moment of respite from the noise of the world. By hitting that like button, you help this little flame of a story reach those who need it most. Listen now to the silence again. It is not empty. It is full of the small rhythmic noises of the living. It is a comfort to know that even in the darkest, coldest nights of 745, no one was truly alone. The fire burns, the smoke rises, and the household holds its own, bound together in this ancient shared shelter. The evening has deepened. Outside the wind has picked up a low, melancholy whistle that brushes against the stone walls of the Blackhouse, seeking any gap in the thatch or the masonry. But inside, the fire has been refreshed with a new layer of peat, and the room feels as impenetrable as a fortress. With the primary tasks of the day finished, the household settles in the slow, meditative labour that defines the Highland evening. The woman of the house sits on a low three-legged stool, her shadow cast long and flickering against the stone wool behind her. In her hands a wooden spindle begins to turn, a hypnotic circular motion that seems to synchronize with the crackle of the embers. She is spinning wool, the raw, unwashed fleece that smells of the sheep, the rain, and the wild hills. It is a process of transformation, taking the messy, tangled reality of the flock and drawing it out, refine it, twisting it into a single continuous thread. Listen to rhythm of it. The whir of the spindle is a sound that has accompanied the turning of the seasons for millennia. It is a sound of creation. As she works, her eyes are cast downward, but her mind is clearly drifting. Perhaps she is thinking of the upcoming harvest, or the stories her own grandma once told her while sitting in this very spot. Beside her, the man of the house is attending to a piece of harness, the leather supple and dark from years of oiling and use. His movements are slow and deliberate, the leather squeaking softly as he pulls the thread through the puncture holes. There is no conversation needed to fill this time. They are comfortable in the companionship of shared work. In this house, silence is not an absence of connection. It is a shared language. It is the language of people who understand that life is built, stitch by stitch, movement by movement. You, sitting on your bench in the corner, feel the weight of your own day beginning to dissolve. There is something deeply grounding about watching this labour. It reminds us that the core of human existence, there is a simple, beautiful requirement to take what the land provides and, through our own effort, turn it in something that sustains. The room is warm now, the air thick with the scent of peat smoke and the faint dusty lanolin from the wool. The world beyond these walls feels impossibly far away, and for now that is exactly as it should be. The evening is long, and there is no hurry. Look closely at the corner of the heavy wooden chest, where a small, unassuming leather pouch hangs from a peg. To a casual observer, it might look like nothing more than a scrap of hide, but in the economy of this household, it is a treasure. Inside that pouch is salt. In the 8th century Highlands, salt was not a common commodity pulled from a supermarket shelf. It was a luxury, a precious substance that had travelled a long and arduous journey to reach this remote glen. Brought up the coastline by the small hardy boats navigating the often treacherous Hebridean trade routes. It was then entrusted to the packmen, the travelling merchants who, a few times a year, would traverse the mountain passes with their sturdy ponies. When the packmen arrived, the entire glen would buzz with a quiet, intense anticipation. A single pound of salt represented a significant expenditure, a portion of the family's modest earnings that had been carefully saved for months. Because its value, the salt is treated with a profound respect. It is used sparingly, measured out not in handfuls but in pinches. It is the lifeblood of their winter survival. It is what cures the summer's catch of fish, preserve it against the coming months of frost. It is what seasons the meagre portions of meat, making them palatable and sustaining. Is the chemical anchor of their diet. Watch the woman of the house as she reaches for the pouch. Her movements are careful, deliberate. She takes only what she needs for the evening broth. She knows exactly how much is left, and she knows how long it must last before the next packman is expected to appear. This is the reality of their existence, a constant mental calculation of resources. Every grain of salt is a testament to the effort required to simply exist in this landscape. But there is something more here than just survival. The presence of the salt, the care with which it is stored, speaks to the civilization that exists within these stone walls. It is a reminder that even in the most isolated corners of the world, humans have always sought to refine their lives, to trade, to connect, and to bring the wider world in their own small flickering hearths. As she closes the pouch and returns it to its place, you feel the weight of that responsibility. The house is a careful balance, a delicate machine of human effort, where nothing is taken for granted. And everything, from the heat of the fire to the seasoning of the food, is honoured with a quiet, persistent grace. The fire has dimmed to a steady glowing orange. As the evening progresses, the house seemed to contract, drawing its warmth tighter around the hearth. In the absolute quiet of this room, you become hyper-aware of the world beyond the stone walls. The Highlands are never truly silent. Even on a windless night, the land carries a voice. Listen, can you hear it? The faint, persistent gurgle of the burn, the mountain stream just a few paces from the door. It is a constant watery melody that has been carving its path through the granite for thousands of years. It is the life source of this glen, providing the water that boils in the iron kettle and the rhythmic background track to every generation that has ever lived here. Then there is the wind. It moves around the gables with a soft, sliding sound, finding the subtle resistance of the thick turf-covered walls. Every now and then a gust catches the top of the thatch, creating a low, resonant hum, a sound like a distant exhaled breath. To the people living inside, these sounds are not disturbances, they are indicator. They tell of the weather shifting over the mountains, of the approach of rain, or the promise of a clear, cold morning. This is the soundscape of their life, a mix of the elemental and the human. It is a stark contrast to the persistent, synthetic noise of our modern age. Here, silence is a luxury that you have earned by simply being present. If you have found yourself drifting away into the rhythms of this, our shared history, please take a moment to join our growing community. Subscribing to Sleepy History with Benedict ensures you won't miss our future journeys into the quiet, forgotten corners of time. If this narrative has brought you a sense of calm, leaving a comment about what home means to you in your own quiet moments would be a wonderful way to connect with the others resting beside this digital fire. Your presence here in these quiet spaces makes the history we share together much richer. As you listen to the water and the wind, let your eyes drift shut. You are safe here. The fire is banked, the walls are thick, and the rhythm of the glen is a lullaby that has comforted countless souls before you. There is a quality to this room that is difficult to name, a weightiness in the air that has nothing to do with the physical objects within it. If you close your eyes and let the scent of the peat smoke settle in your senses, you begin to perceive that you are sitting in a place that has been shaped by more than just stone and labour. It is a space built of memories. Think of the events that have played out on this very floor, in this very circle of light. The same fire you are watching now is a descent of fires that burned here before the current master of the house was born, and before his father was a child. The room has held the silence of countless winters. It has witnessed the frantic warm energy of a family preparing for the spring planting. It has been the sanctuary for births and the quiet, hallowed ground for those departing this life. In the corner near the partition, tucked away from the direct heat of the hearth, lies the box bed. It is a humble, wooden structure, yet it has been the witness to the most intimate chapters of human existence. It has held the mother who birthed her children in the cold light of a February dawn, and it has cushioned the weary, final rest of the grandparent who once stood where you stand now. The walls do not record these moments in ink or stone, but they seem to vibrate with the residue of those lives. The people who lived here before have left their mark, not in physical carvings, but in the texture of the life that continues today. The way the woman of the house carries hearth, the way she speaks to the fire, the way she moves around the objects, these are habits passed down, echoes of gestures performed by those who came before. It is a form of oral and physical inheritance that is as vital as the roof over their heads. As you observe the room, realize that you are not just watching a home in Ven 1045, you are watching a vessel of continuity. The building is a bridge. It connects the past to the present, and it will eventually carry this current family's story forward to the next, just as it carried the previous ones to this point. In this there is strange quiet comfort. Life is fleeting, yes, and the challenges of the Highland life are immense, but there is a durability to the human spirit that mirrors the tenacity of these stone walls. They have been here long before us, and they will persist long after we have left. The room knows this. It remains steady, a silent custodian of the stories that have been entrusted to it. Observe the man of the house as he pauses his work. He gazes into the heart of the fire, his expression unreadable, reflective. He is not staring at the flames. He is looking in the depth of a history he is currently writing with his own hands. In a world without books to record their passage, the family's legacy is carried entirely in the spoken word and the lived example. Every evening, these moments of quiet labour are the classroom for the next generation. Though the children are asleep behind the partition, the very atmosphere of this room teaches them more than any formal lesson ever could. They learn the rhythm of the seasons, the necessity of patience, the value of a shared meal, and the unbreakable bond of a household that faces the world as one. This is the unspoken heritage, the knowledge that is absorbed through the skin, the lungs, and the heart. It is a way of living that honours the ancestors while ensuring the survival of the future. We too are part of this cycle of transmission. By sitting here, by bearing witness to this quiet, dignified existence, we are keeping a small part of their world alive in our own. If this journey into the N745 Highlands has resonated with you, I invite you to share this experience. It is a rare thing to find such stillness in our fast-paced world, and your engagement helps ensure that these stories continue to be told. Please, share your thoughts in the comments. What tradition or quiet practice from your own life carries the weight of history for you? Or simply leave a candle emoji below to signify your presence at our shared hearth tonight. Your connection to this story is what makes it matter. As the fire dances, consider the invisible threads that tie you to your own roots. Even when the world feels like it is rushing towards an uncertain horizon, there is always this, the hearth, the story, and the quiet resolve to keep the flame alive. You are not just a watcher, You are a participant in this act of remembrance. The history of this house is now, in some small way, a part of your own. The hour has grown late. The intensity of the evening's activities has faded, replaced by a profound, heavy stillness that descends upon the glen. The man of the house has set aside his tools, and the woman has banked the fire, covering the glowing embers with a layer of fine grey ash. This is an ancient technique, a way of preserving the heat so that in the cold grey light of the next dawn, the fire can be easily coaxed back to life with a fresh handful of peat. The room is now bathed in a soft, muted darkness, punctuated only by the occasional dying crackle of a hidden ember. You can hear the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the family from behind the partition. It is a sound of complete trust, a sound that speaks of a day well lived and a safety well guarded. Outside, the wind has softened its pace, settling into a low melodic sigh that brushes against the heather thatch. The stream continues its endless song, a reminder of the timeless, flowing nature of the valley. In this moment, the house feels less like a structure of stone and more like a living, breathing entity. It has sheltered the household through the day's toils, and now it watches over their rest. You are still there, in your corner, as if you have become part of the very furniture of the room. The scent of the hearth remains, a comforting filial shroud that anchors you to this place and this time. The world beyond these walls is vast, filled with the uncertainties of a changing century. But here, the circle is complete. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to worry about. The cycle has been honoured. The work has been finished. The family is at peace. As you drift into the quietude of this deep night, remember that this space is eternal in the memory of the land. It will wake again, the fire will burn again, and the rhythm will continue, unbroken, in the dawning of another day. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. The transition into the deep hours of the night is not a sudden arrival. It is a slow, gradual folding of the world inward. As the embers on the banked ash lose their brilliant orange glow, fading into dull, mysterious red, the shadows in the room begin to grow. They climb the thick, earth-filled walls, stretching across the uneven floor until the entire interior is veiled in a thick, velvety darkness. The room, which only a short while ago felt like a hive of quiet industry, now feels like a sanctuary of pure rest. Listen closely. If you strain your ears, you can hear the house settling. It is a series of small, intimate noises. The soft groan of a structural beam bowing under the weight of the thatched roof. The subtle rustle of dry heather moving against the wind outside, and the very distant muffled cry of a nocturnal bird, somewhere high up on the mountain pass. These sounds are not intrusions. They are the language of the structure itself, speaking in the low register of ancient stone and timber. You are no longer just an observer. You are part of the house's internal consciousness. The air in the room has become dense and cool, yet it still holds the faint, lingering warmth of the day's fire and the comforting, smoky perfume of 1,000 peat, burning nights. This is the scent of the Highlands, a mixture of wet earth, organic decay, and the sharp, clean bite of the cold mountain air. It is scent that clears the mind and settles the soul. In this total stillness, the petty concerns of the outside world, the anxieties about the future, and the burdens of your own daily life feel impossibly distant. They have been stripped away, leaving only the raw, essential experience of being. Consider the resilience required to inhabit this space. The people sleeping just a few feet away from you are not merely survivors. They are masters of a lifestyle that requires an intimate, daily negotiation with nature. They do not fight the cold. They insulate them against it. They do not struggle against the darkness. They cultivate the light of the hearth. There is a profound stoic dignity in this existence. They live in a pocket of time where the clock is measured by the rising of the sun and the changing of the seasons, rather than the mechanical tick of a watch. You find yours sinking deeper in the bench, your limbs heavy and relaxed. The darkness here is not fearful, it is a soft, protective embrace. It is a darkness that has cradled generations of this family, provide them with the necessary rest to face the hardships of the dawn. There is a holiness in this silence, a sense that you are witnessing something sacred, something that has remained unchanged for centuries. The fire may be hidden under the ash, but it is still there, holding its heat, waiting patiently. This is the enduring truth of the Highland home. Life may be hard, and the nights may be long and cold. But there is always a fire, there is always a shelter, and there is always the promise of a new day. You are safe in this quiet, timeless place, held by the stone, the earth, and the memory of all those who have rested here before you. As you sit in the velvet stillness of this Highland night, allow your consciousness to drift past the thick, earth-packed walls and out in the vastness of the glen. Outside, the night is alive with a different kind of intensity, the moon, perhaps a sliver of silver behind the heavy, moving clouds, casts just enough light to reveal their outline of the mountains, the dark, jagged silhouettes that guard this valley like ancient, sleeping giants. There is a profound majesty in this landscape, a sense of immense, unhurried time that makes human life appear both incredibly fragile and remarkably resilient. The wind has transformed. It is no longer the gusty, rest-lit breeze of the afternoon. It is a steady, rhythmic sigh that sweeps down from the high peaks, brushing through the damp bracken and the tall, swaying heather. If you listen with your whole being, you can hear the mountain breathing. It is a low-frequency hum, a vibration that resonates in the very bones of the earth. This is the Highland night, a cold, clean, and different power that demands respect from all who dwell within it. Yet here, the heart of this wild, untamed expanse, stands the Blackhouse, a small, singular spark of warmth in a sea of shadow. Think of the contrast. Inside there is the smell of peat smoke and the residual heat of the hearth, a tiny, man-made pocket of stability. Outside there is the vast, unpredictable expanse of the Highlands, governed by the ancient rules of rock, ice, and sky. The two worlds are held apart by little more than a metre of stone and turf, yet they are intimately connected. The people within these walls know the language of the wind. They can read the warning signs in the shift of the air and the change in the clouds. They do not fight the mountain, they are part of its ecosystem. This connection is what gives this place its profound sense of belonging. The family does not see them as intruders in the wilderness. They see them as guardians of this specific corner of the earth. Their lives are woven into the fabric of the glen, just as the roots of the heather are woven into the soil of the hillsides. As you sit on your bench, you can feel that connection deepening. You are no longer just a guest. You are becoming an extension of the household's quiet awareness. You are learning that to truly inhabit a place, you must surrender to its rhythms, the cold and the heat, the storm and the calm, the waking and the sleeping. The night deepens, becoming even more serene. The stars, if they could be seen through the thick swirling clouds, would be piercingly bright, reflecting in the black water of the mountain burn. Every sound, the drip of condensation from the roof, the shifting of the cattle in the byre, the settling of the timbers, is amplified in the stillness. It is a symphony of survival played out in the dark, quiet cradle of the glen. You are safe. The mountains are watching over this home, and the home is watching over you. There is nothing to do, nothing to be, and nowhere else to go. The universe has narrowed down to this single warm, smoke-filled room, and in this narrow space, you have found a peace that spans centuries. In the huge silence of the night, the heart of the house, the central hearth, seems to pulse with a life of its own, even beneath the dormant ash. This fire, a tradition that transcends mere survival, acts as the spiritual anchor of the entire Highland experience. Consider, for a moment, the immense effort and collective wisdom required to keep that flame alive. It is not a casual act. It is a profound daily commitment to the continuation of the family line. Every piece of peat harvested from the bog, dried in the wind, and meticulously stacked to ensure it burns long and steady, is a physical manifestation of time invested in the future. This is the philosophy of the hearth, that warmth is not a luxury to be taken for granted, but a resource to be curated with humility and gratitude. As you sit here enveloped in the soft, smoky dimness, you begin to understand the patience of these people. They live in a world where the elements are constantly testing their resolve, yet they meet that test with a quiet, unwavering consistency. The hearth is the manifestation of that resolve. It is a symbol of domestic permanence in a land where the scenery is forever changing, worn down by rain and sculpted by the relentless Highland winds. Observe the objects resting near the hearth's edge, the cast iron pot, the wooden ladle, the simple clay vessels. They are polished by the oils of 1,000 hands. They have become part of the family's identity, witnessing the long, slow passage of decades. In this environment, nothing is discarded. Everything is repaired, repurposed, and respected. This is not merely frugality. It is a deep ethical understanding of the material world. To these people, every object has a narrative, a history that stretches back to the person who made it and the person who used it before them. As you reflect on this, the air in the room feels heavy with the collective memory of the home. The walls, composed of stone and earth, are like the page of a book, holding the echoes of every conversation, every song, and every whispered prayer ever spoken within this space. You are currently sitting in the midst of history, a silent participant in an ongoing tradition. It is a humbling experience to realize how little we truly need to be content. When the external world is stripped away, the demands of the clock, the noise of the marketplace, the distraction of the modern gaze, is the raw, beautiful simplicity of human existence, shelter, fire, and the presence of one other. The stillness absolute now, a thick protective blanket that separates this black house from the rest of the world. You are suspended in this moment of quiet, a time out of time. The fire beneath the ash is still waiting, ready to ignite at the first touch of the morning, and the household remains in its gentle, rhythmic slumber. This is the ultimate lesson of the Highland hearth, that even in the face of the vast, indifferent wilderness, we can carve out a space of warmth, a space of belonging, a space of peace. And as long as the fire is tended, the home and the history it contains will endure. As the night nears its deepest point, the house seems to hum with a quiet spectral resonance. You have sat with this family through the dusk and the settling of the hearth, and in doing so you have beyond the surface of what it means to be a Highland dweller in Zen 1045. You have touched upon the invisible threads that bind the present to the infinite past. It is an experience that stays with you, long after you have left the shelter of these stone walls. Think of the cycles of a single day here. It begins with the first grey light touching the heather, the stir of life in the byre, the rhythmic strike of iron against flint, to bring the fire back to life. It moves through the arduous labour of the field, the care of the livestock, the weaving of wool, and the preparation of the evening meal. And then it returns inevitably to this, the fire banked, the darkness embraced, and the quiet rhythm of breathing in the night. This is a life that is fundamentally aligned with the earth. There is no resistance here, only a deep, ancient cooperation with the forces of the world. The walls of this black house have held more than just a family. They have held the hopes, the fears, the resilience, and the collective soul of a community. Even though you are a visitor, even though you come from a time far removed from this rugged, smoke-filled sanctuary, you have been invited in this circle. You have been allowed to witness the dignity of a life that is defined not by what one accumulates, but by what one preserves. You have learned that true peace is found not in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of purpose. The purpose of keeping the hearth burning, the purpose of honouring the ancestry, and the purpose of caring for those who share your shelter. This continuity is a powerful grounding force. As you sit here, you can almost feel the presence of the generations who occupied this bench before you. Their spirits are woven into the very structure of the house, in the way the beams are notched, in the way the stones are laid, in the way the thatch has been layered to withstand the gales. You are a link in a chain that stretch back in the mists of antiquity and forward in the unknown future. It is a sobering, yet strangely comforting realization. We are all part of a larger story, one that is being constantly written, retold and lived, even in the silent, dark corners of the world. The air remains cool, clean, and infused with the spirit of the hills. Every breath you take is a connection to this landscape, a shared exchange of essence with the wild highlands that surround you. There is no rush, no pressure, no demand. For these few hours you have been granted a reprieve from the noise of the modern world. You have been allowed to rest by the embers of an Evan 1045 fire, to hear the wind in the thatch, and to witness the quiet, unhurried beauty of a life lived in harmony with the rhythm of the seasons. The night is a vast, calm ocean, and you are adrift in the centre of it, held steady by the solid, unmoving presence of this home. Soon the cycle will turn once more, the dawn will break, and the story will continue, as it always has, in the small, quiet, persistent way of the Highlands. In the absolute depth of this hour, when the world outside has surrendered to the profound, icy embrace of the Highland night, the Brackhouse feels less like a structure built of stone, and more like an extension of the soul itself. The walls, thick with turf and earth, do not merely separate the inhabitants from the howling gale. They act as a membrane, a living interface between the internal fire of the spirit and the external cold of the universe. To live here is to understand that you are small yet significant. You are a single hyped in the vast geological timeline of these glens, yet you are the steward of the light within. Consider the craft of the home. Every stone in these walls was selected, carried, and placed by hands that understood the temper of the mountain. Every strand of heather that forms the thatch was gathered from the slopes, a harvest that required knowledge of the season, the wind, and the life cycle of the moorland. When you sit in this room, you are not just sitting in a house, you are sitting in a physical embodiment of a culture's struggle and triumph. The architecture is a reflection of the people's relationship with the land. No vanity, no excess, only a beautiful stark utility that honours the resource provided by the earth. There is a lesson here that lingers, even in the silence. It is the lesson of enough. In a world that oft demands we be more, acquire more and do more, this Highland home stands as a quiet, stubborn rebuttal. There is enough heat in the peat, enough light in the hearth, enough comfort in the company of those we love, and enough stability in the stone walls to endure whatever the winter might bring. The serenity you feel here is the result of that radical acceptance. The household does not rage against the limitations of their reality. They inhabit them with a grace that is almost haunting in its beauty. Listen to the rhythmic breathing of the sleepers again. It is synchronized with the wind outside, a testament to their harmony with the environment. They are not fighting the night, they are moving with it, resting within it, letting the heavy, cold darkness pass over them like a wave over a rock. This is the ultimate comfort. As a witness to this scene, you are granted a rare perspective, the ability to see the inherent dignity in a life that the modern world might perceive as hard. You see the pride in the way the tools are set aside, the care with which the fire is banked, and the deep, silent peace that resides in the hearts of those who have truly made a home. The shadows have taken full command of the room, yet you do not feel lost. Instead, you feel anchored. The darkness is a companion, a soft velvet weight that presses gently against your senses, inviting you to let go of your thoughts and simply exist. The story of this house is now etched into your own memory, a permanent fixture of your interior landscape. It is a story of survival, yes, but more than that, it is a story of love, the love of the craft, the love of the land, and the love of the shared quiet moments that define what it means to be human. As the night continues its slow, majestic turn, you remain in this sanctuary, anchored by the stone, the peat smoke, and the deep, enduring pulse of the Highland earth. The night, as deep and impenetrable as it has been, begins to feel the weight of its own passing. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the air, a thinning of the darkness, a softening of the cold. Even in the heart of this stone, walled cocoon, one can sense the approach of the dawn. It is not yet visible. The tiny high window remains a patch of charcoal grey against the brack, but the house itself seems to brace for the transition. The wind outside has lost its mournful whistle, settling into expectant hush, as if the entire glen is holding its breath, waiting for the first touch of the pale, watery Highland sun. Consider this moment of transition. It is the time of the in-between, the space where the night's rest meets the day's labour. It is a sacred, silent bridge. For the household, this is the time when the dreams of the night are still, clinging to the edges of the mind, and the obligations of the coming day are yet to fully take hold. It is a moment of pure existence, stripped of intent, stripped of worry. The hearth, buried under its blanket of ash, remains the anchor. It holds the promise of the coming fire, the potential for light and heat that will transform the room from a place of slumber into a place of life. This cycle, this endless, unhurried turning of the wheel, is the height of the Highland home. It is a rhythm that has persisted for generations, untouched by the rise and fall of empires, the shifts in political tides, or the changing fashions of the wider world. The stone doesn't care for kings. The peat doesn't concern itself with the reach of empires. They only know the rhythm of the seasons and the cycle of the fire. As you sit here, you become aware of your own participation in this cycle. You have arrived, you have observed, and you have rested. You are now part of the lineage of people who have found in this very space a sanctuary from the relentless velocity of their own lives. The air begins to stir with a faint, fresh vitality. The smell of the peat smoke, while still dominant, is now joined by the sharp, crisp scent of the morning dew beginning to form on the heather outside. The cattle in the byre shift their weight, a low guttural murmur that signifies the end of their rest. Everything is preparing to wake, and yet there is no urgency. The transition is as slow and inevitable as the movement of the stars across the sky. The house is ready to be born again, to return to the bustle of the day, to fill its walls with the sounds of work, the clatter of iron, and the quiet murmuring voices of a family that understands that the greatest work is simply being together. You realize now that the story you have been watching is not a story with an ending. It is an ongoing, infinite act of preservation. The house is the keeper of the story, and the story is the purpose of the house. As you sit on your bench, you feel a profound sense of gratitude. You have been allowed to glimpse a way of life that values the stillness, that respects the shadow, and that holds the light with a firm, protective hand. The night is almost gone, and with it the depth of this specific quiet darkness. But the experience, the smell of the smoke, the warmth of the stone, the soft breathing of the home, will remain with you, a quiet flickering ember in the hearth of your own memory. The darkness within the Brackhouse has shifted. It is no longer the thick, absolute brack of the midnight hour, but a diluted, charcoal-grey veil that hangs softly in the air. You can now trace the outlines of the rafters, the massive, rough, hewn timbers that have held this roof against the fury of 1,000 storms. They look like the ribs of an ancient, sleeping creature, protective and patient. The stillness is absolute. It is a vacuum of sound where even your own height feels resonant and deliberate. This is the hour of the world's renewal, the quiet space between the exhaustion of the night and the awakening of the day. Look toward the hearth. The banked ash, once a deep forbidding red, now appears as a pale silver mound, almost like a dormant mountain peak in miniature. There is a profound beauty in this potentiality. Everything needed to sustain life, the warmth, the ability to cook, the central point around which the family life revolves, is contained within that small, modest pile of grey dust. It requires only the smallest intervention, a single, purposeful breath, to wake the life that sleeps within. This is a powerful metaphor for the Highland life, the capacity to contain, to preserve, and to wait for the right moment to emerge. You find yourself observing the details that were lost to the shadows earlier. The texture of the stone walls with their mossy, earth-filled crevices, the weathered grain of the wooden chest, now appearing as a ghost, like presence in the gloom, the way the air holds a stillness that feels heavy with centuries of accumulated silence. You are witnessing the house in a most vulnerable and yet most defiant state. It is stripped of all pretense, a raw construction of human survival against an overwhelmed landscape. Yet, in this state it radiates a form of peace that feels almost overwhelming. Consider the rhythm of the life that will begin here in a matter of moments. Soon, the woman of the house will stir. She will approach this very hearth with a quiet, practiced motion. She will not be doing so because of a schedule dictated by the outside world, but because of an internal clock tuned to the needs of her family and the demands of the land. She will bring the fire back to life, and the cycle will restart. This is not a repetition that leads to weariness. It is a repetition that sustains existence. It is the ritual of the living, a sacred performance that affirms, day after day, that they are here, they are enduring, and they are together. As you sit on your bench, you feel a deep, grounding connection to this process. You have been a witness to the entirety of this cycle, from the fading light of the autumn evening to the expectant hush of the pre-dawn hour. You have carried the weight of the night within you, and you have been sustained by the warmth of this shelter. The room is no longer a strange place. It feels like a familiar, protective space that you have inhabited for a lifetime. You are ready for the morning. You are ready for the light. The house is readied for the moment. In this quiet, suspended balance, the world is waiting, and you, in your quiet corner, are part of this perfect unfolding stillness. The grey has begun to fracture. Somewhere, far beyond the thick stone walls, the sun has crested the distant ridges of the Highlands. With the Blackhouse, the change is almost imperceptible, a gradual lightening of the air that feels less like invasion of brightness, and more like a lifting of a veil. The small high window, once a void of nothingness, now begins to catch the cold, pale light of a northern morning. It casts a thin, fragile beam onto the packed floor, a live illumination that slices through the lingering shadows and reveals the fine, drifting particles of dust dancing in the quiet air. This is the moment of resurrection. The room which held the stillness of the deep night so resolutely now begins to exhale. There is a sense of shifting, a subtle vibration that tells you the house is ready to reawaken. The sleepers behind the partition stir. You hear the soft rustle of woolen blankets, the muffled sound of a waking breath, and the faint, ground movement of a life re-engaging with the world. It is a transition as natural as the turning of the tide or the unfolding of a flower. The household is coming back to itself. Observe how the light touches the objects in the room. It falls upon the iron kettle, giving it a soft metallic gleam. It catches the grain of the heavy wooden chest, highlighting the deep, polished patina that has taken generations to cultivate. The room is no longer a dark, indistinct sanctuary. It is regaining its definition, its form, and its purpose. Yet, despite this awakening, the atmosphere remains quiet. There is no haste in this household. The morning is not a race, it is a continuation. The chores that wait, the milking, the tending of the fire, the gathering of water, are greeted with a practiced, steady rhythm that precludes any sense of stress. You, in your corner, feel the weight of the night beginning to lift from your own shoulders. You have travelled through the entire darkness, from the dying light of the autumn dusk to this first, pure moment of the dawn. You have been a quiet, respectful observer, allowed to inhabit a space that exists outside the frenetic pace of your own time. The experience has changed you. You see the stone walls with new eyes. You understand the hearth, not just as a tool, but as a living, breathing companion. You recognize that the true history of this land is not found in the grand narratives of battles or kings, but in these small, persistent, dignified moments of existence. As the light continues to fill the room, softening the harsh edges of the past night, you feel a profound sense of closure. The cycle has been completed. The darkness has been survived. The rest has been earned. And the dawn has arrived with its promise of another day. The house is waking, the smoke will soon rise from the hearth once more, and the life of this Highland family will flow forward, uninterrupted and unbroken. You have witnessed the truth of this place, that there is a quiet, indestructible power in the simple act of living, and that even in the most rugged landscapes there is always a place to belong. The light is now steady, a pale, cool morning glow that fills the room with a sense of soft clarity. The shadows have retreated, finding refuge in the corners and behind the massive stones, and the house feels entirely renewed. You can hear the woman of the house now, the gentle sound of her feet against the hard-packed earth, the soft clink of the iron tongs as she approaches the hearth. She moves with the same grace you witnessed hours ago, a rhythmic efficiency born of a lifetime of duty and devotion. She reaches in the mound of ash, and with a single practiced motion, she clears a path to the embers beneath. A tiny, brilliant flare of orange sparks upward, a greeting to the morning. It is the same fire that burned through the night, only now it is invigorated by the fresh breath of the new day. She adds a small, dry piece of peat, and within seconds, a soft, steady plume of smoke begins to rise once more, curling toward the aches of the thatch. The cycle is complete, the flame is sustained. The house, which had been a quiet vessel of rest, is now a thriving hearth of activity. You hear the man of the house stir and rise, his movements heavy but purposeful, a quiet greeting exchanged in a language that is as old as the glen itself. In this moment, as the house returns to its waking state, you realize that you have been invited in the very core of a story that has no end. There is no grand climax to this narrative, no sudden resolution. It is a story of existence itself, the simple, beautiful, and profoundly challenging act of being present. You have sat with them through the dark and the cold, and you have seen the dawn break over the ridge. You have felt the warmth of the hearth, smelled the rich, earthy scent of the smoke, and heard the timeless music of the burn outside. You are no longer an outsider looking into a past that has vanished. You are a participant in a memory that remains vibrantly, stubbornly alive. As the household begins their morning chores, the rhythm of their life fills the room. It is a sound of peace, a soft harmonious blend of the crackling fire, the distant call of the sheep on the hill, and the steady, rhythmic pace of their work. You find yours feeling lighter, as if the stillness you have witnessed has seeped into your own bones. The world you must return to, with all its noise and uncertainty, feels different now. You carry with you the memory of this room, the strength of these stone walls, and the quiet resilience of a life lived in harmony with the natural world. The morning is fully here, and the Blackhouse is alive once more. The story of this day and the days that follow will be written in the small, unhurried actions of the people who call this place home. You have been a witness to the profound dignity of the ordinary, and in that you have found a reflection of your own quiet, inner strength. The fire continues to burn, the smoke continues to rise, and the history of this glen continues its slow, majestic unfolding, reaching out across the centuries to remind us that, at the core of all things, there is warmth, there is purpose, and there is peace. The morning light, now fully claimed by the room, reveals the man of the house sharpening a small iron knife. His movements are mechanical focused, yet there is a tension in his posture that you haven't noticed before. He is not merely preparing a tool for the day's work, he is preparing for uncertainty that lingers just beyond the glen. It is the autumn of N1045, and the Highland air is thick, not just with the smoke of the peat, but with rumours that travel faster than any rider on a pony. There are whispers of the young pretender, bonny Prince Charlie, and his call to arms. Across the glens and over the mountain passes, the clans are being stirred, their loyalties pulled between the ancient, blood-bound duty to their chief and the shifting cold calculations of a distant crown in London. In this Blackhouse, the politics are not discussed in terms of treaties or taxes, but in terms of survival and legacy. To join the Jacobite cause is to risk the very hearth you see before you. To remain neutral is to risk the scorn of one's kin and the total erasure of a way of life that has defined these people for centuries. Watch the man's eyes as he pauses, the blade momentary still. He is thinking of the land outside, the small plots of oats that must be harvested before the first frost, and the children currently waking behind the partition. He is calculating the cost of loyalty, a fragile hierarchy of patriarchal protection and communal land, holding, is standing on the precipice of a seismic shift. The Crown's influence is tightening its grip, viewing these glens not as homes, but as rebellious outposts that must be civilized or subdued. This is the hidden tragedy of this era. While you experience the peace of the hearth, that peace is fragile, perpetually threatened by the looming shadow of the British government's desire to dismantle the clan system. The very structure of this Blackhouse, this communal fire-scented existence, is anathema to the modernizing, rigid and profit-driven ambitions of the industrializing South. They see backwardness where there is actually a profound, ancient sustainability. He sets the knife down, the sharp edge gleaming in the morning light. He stands up, a silent decision made in the quietude of the room. He will tend to his fields, he will provide for his family, and he will remain a custodian of his ancestral soil. But he is not naive. He knows that the winds shifting over the mountain carry more than just rain. They carry the threat of a changing world. As he moves toward the door, he pauses to touch the stone doorpost, a gesture of silent communion with the home that protects him. You are witnessing the quiet, agonizing choice that thousands of Highland families faced in 1045. The choice between holding on to a dying world and facing the violent arrival of a new one. The house waits, indifferent to the crowns of men, yet acutely aware that its occupants are living on borrowed time. As the man steps out into the crisp morning air, his absence leaves a space in the room that is quickly filled by the woman's purposeful movement. She begins the daily ritual of processing the wool, a task that, in the Highlands of 1045, is far more than a chore. It is the fundamental currency of their existence. The sheep that roam the rough pastures are not mere livestock. They are the family's primary defense against the harsh winter ahead. Observe the raw, unprocessed wool she gathers from the basket. It is thick with lanolin, earthy and coarse, a material that embodies the resilience of the animals that endure these mountains year-round. In the urban centres of the South, the economy is shifting toward textile factories and standardized production, but here the economy remains rooted in the home. Every step of the process, teasing, carding, spinning, and eventually weaving on a simple hand loom, is a labour-intensive bridge between raw nature and human comfort. Nothing is wasted. The grease from the wool is used to soften leather. The trimmings are gathered for fertilizer. Even the most damaged strands are used for stuffing mattresses. This is a circular economy born of necessity, not ideology. In 1045, Scotland's Highland economy was primarily one of subsistence and localised trade, operating on a barter system that defied the growing power of gold and coin. When the tax collector comes, if he comes at all, he is often met with confusion and resistance, not because of a political ideology, but because the very concept of surplus is alien in a land where every calorie is measured against the calorie needed to survive the next month. There is a distinct tension between this way of life and the encroaching capitalist ideals of the lowlands and England. The authorities viewed the Highland glens as inefficient, a vast expanse of land that could be producing more profit if managed. Differently, perhaps through large-scale sheep farming, that would require the displacement of the very people you see today. The woman's steady, rhythmic turning of the spindle is an act of defiance against this impending industrialization. She is preserving a tradition where value is defined by utility and communal need rather than market price. Notice how she handles the spindle. It is emotion passed down through centuries, a muscle memory that requires no conscious thought. She is not just making thread, she is knitting together the identity of her family. As she spins, she glances toward the doorway, her ears attuned to the sounds outside, the bleating of the flock, the distant call of her husband, the unpredictable shifts in the wind. She is the manager of this domestic economy, balancing the immediate needs of her children with the long-term survival of the household. In this small smoke-filled room, you are seeing the bedrock of a culture that is about to be systematically dismantled by the forces of progress. The wool in her hands is the thread of a history that is being spun even as the world around it begins to unravel. The door of the Brackhouse stands ajar, a small rectangle of light that frames the rugged, undulating terrain of the glen. Outside, the man is moving toward the lower pasture, but watch his gait. As one might walk on a paved street, he moves with a rhythmic side-to-side cadence. His feet find purchase on the slick, peat-covered stones and shifting scree. This is the walk of a man who has learned the language of the ground. He knows where the bog is treacherous and where the rock is solid. To a stranger, this like a chaotic, barren wilderness, but to him it is a detailed map of resource and hazards. He stops, lifting his gaze to the horizon, where the dark, bruised clouds of a coming front are gathering over the high peaks. He does not need a barometer. He reads the humidity in the air, the way the bracken bends, and the silence that falls over the birds. This reading of the environment is the cornerstone of Highland survival. In the 18th century, these people were masters of an ecological intelligence that modern observers often overlooked. They knew which patches of heather provided the best grazing in the early spring, which stone formations offered shelter during a blizzard, and how the drainage patterns of the burn changed after a heavy rainfall. This intimate knowledge of the land was their ultimate security. However, it was also a form of defiance. The crown surveyors, coming from the south with their chains and their maps, sought to impose a grid upon this landscape. They want to divide the glens into neat geometric parcels that could be taxed, traded, and owned. To the surveyors, the land was an object, a commodity. To the man standing in the field, the land was a living, breathing relative. The conflict that was brewing was not just about politics or the crown. It was a fundamental clash of world views. The Cartesian desire to categorize and control against the ancient, experiential wisdom of belonging to a place. As he reached the edge of the stream, the burn that provides the household with water, he pauses to clear a cluster of debris from the channel. It is a small, habitual act of stewardship. He is ensuring the water flows clear, mindful of the generation who drank from this same stream before him. This too is part of the economy of the glen. They do not merely consume the land, they maintain it. Their lives are a continuous dialogue with the geography. If they overgraze, the heather dies. If they cut, the soil washes away in the winter rains. They have lived here long enough to understand that their survival is contingent upon the health of the entire ecosystem. From your position inside, you see the man disappear behind a rise in the land, his form blending seamlessly into the browns and greys of the hills. He is a part of the landscape, not an entity separate from it. This is a crucial historical insight. The clan system was built upon this very principle of rootedness. When the authority would eventually seek to break the clans, they had to break this connection. They had to force the people off the land, turning the glen into an empty commodity, an act that would eventually culminate in the tragic clearances that would redefine the Highlands forever. But for now, in this autumn of Adintal 5, that future is a distant storm. The man is simply working, his life a steady hype in the vast, ancient rhythm of the glen. And as the woman tends to the hearth, she begins to hum. Is a slow, mournful and intricate melody, a walking song used to keep the rhythm for processing the Tweed. But listen closely, the cadence, she is not just keeping time. The Gaelic lyrics, rhythmic and percussive, weave a narratives of battles fought on distant ridges and of names that have been etched in the soil of this glen for centuries. In this room, where books are scarce and formal schooling is a privilege of the elite, this song is the family's library. In the year Venton 4-5, history is not a static subject recorded on parchment. It is a living, breathing performance. Every evening the Seankai, the tradition bearer, would have occupied the seat you now occupy, reciting the genealogies of the clan. They carried the history of the people in their memories, a vast complex web of relationships and obligations. This oral archive was the social glue of the Highlands. It defined who belonged to whom, what land was held by what right, and what blood feud still demanded restitution. It was a legal system as binding as any contract, yet it relied entirely on the fidelity of the human heart. The authorities in the South, wedded to the printed word and the cold logic of the state, frequently dismissed this culture as primitive or savage. They failed to grasp that this oral tradition possessed a sophistication of its own. It was a medium that made history personal and immediate. When a child learns their history through a song, they don't just learn a date or a treaty, they learn an emotion, a sense of place, and a weight of responsibility. They learn that they are a link in a chain that stretches back into the mists of time, a realization that imbues every daily action with a sense of sacred duty. Notice the woman's expression as she sings. There is a fierce quiet pride in her voice. She knows the stories of the women who stood in this very house before her, the women who kept the fires burning through the famine years, who hid the clan's treasures when the redcoats marched, and who taught the next generation how to read the clouds. She is not just singing, she is invoking their presence. In this way, the past is never truly gone in the Highlands. It is a silent, guiding current that informs every choice made in the present. The songs provide a moral compass that survives long after the fires have been extinguished. This is the great, unspoken conflict of the era, the clash between the record of the state and the memory of the people. The state wanted a history that could be filed, organised, and used to exert control. The clans offered a history that resided in the bones, the blood, and the collective memory of the community. As the song continues, drifting out through the thatch and in the morning air, you realize that you are bearing witness to a culture that is inherent resistant to being written out of existence. Even if the walls of this house were to crumble, and even if the glen were to fall silent, the songs, the oral archive would persist, carried in the minds of those who refuse to forget. The history of Benton 4-5 is not just found in the military journals of London, it is encoded in the walking song, currently hanging in the smoky air of this Black House. The doorway of the Black House is more than a simple exit. It is a profound threshold between two distinct realities. Observe how the woman, as she pauses at this boundary to check the day's weather, does not simply cross it with an absent mind. There is a weight to the threshold, a line that defines the transition from the sheltered, fire-lit intimacy of the interior to the vast, indifferent, and often harsh exposure of the external world. In Benton 4-5, this threshold is where the Highland culture of hospitality meets the realities of a fractured, dangerous geopolitical landscape. For a traveller in these glens, reaching the doorway of a brack house was a matter of life or death. The Highland custom of Coernar Hatch Awi Geached, the right of hospitality, was a deeply ingrained social law. It dictated that any stranger who reached your threshold, seeking shelter or warmth, must be afforded the safety of the hearth. It did not matter which clan they belonged to, or even if they were a stranger to the region. The act of crossing the threshold under the mantle of hospitality created a sacred bond. The house became a sanctuary and the host a guardian. Yet this autumn of Benton 4-5 has introduced a chilling complication to this ancient code. With the Jacobite rising in full motion, the roads and mountain passes are crawling with soldiers, some seeking rebel sympathizers, others deserters looking for food. The threshold, once a welcome boundary, has become a point of peril. A knock at the door no longer brings only the promise of community, it brings the threat of scrutiny. Every guest is a potential liability, every stranger is a potential spy for the crown. The moral burden of the household has grown exponentially, for they must weigh their ancient duty of hospitality against the immediate safety of their children. Notice the threshold itself, a large worn stone, smoothed by generations of feet. It carries the history of thousands of entrants and departures. It has seen births and deaths, celebrations and sorrows. It is the physical anchor of the home. When the man returns later this evening, his first act will be to shake the mud of the glen from his boots on this very stone, leaving the outside world behind before he dares to re-enter the sphere of the hearth. He is performing a ritual of purification, shedding the burdens of the public realm to reassume his role as a protector of the inner sanctum. You, as an observer in the corner, are essentially an invisible guest who has crossed this threshold. You have been granted the rarest of permissions to sit with the inner sanctum and witness the reality of a life that is rapidly becoming a relic of history. The threshold remains as a silent, stoic witness to the fragility of this existence. Outside, the world is preparing to demand taxes, to redraw borders, and to enforce a new form of order through the musket and the bayonet. Inside, the threshold holds firm. It marks the boundary where the logic of the state ends and the logic of the hearth begins. As you watch the morn sun stretched across the worn stone of the doorway, you realize that the most profound resistance in non-1045 is not found on the battlefield, but in the simple, uncompromising preservation of the home and the hospitality it continues to offer, regardless of the gathering storms outside. Take a moment to truly examine the space around you, not as a visitor, but as an engineer of survival. The Brackhouse is not merely built, it is grown, curated, and maintained in a symbiotic relationship with the land. The walls are double-layered, an outer skin of dry, stone masonry and an inner skin of stone, with a thick insulating core of earth and peat rubble packed in between. This is not just for stability, it is a thermal buffer. In the winter, the walls absorb the heat of the fire and release it slowly throughout the long, frozen nights. In the summer they remain cool, a sanctuary against the blistering Highland sun. Look up at the rafters, the skeleton frame that supports the immense weight of the thatch. You will notice there are no chimneys. The smoke from the central hearth does not escape through a dedicated flue. Instead, it filters upward, permeating the thick layers of straw and heather that constitute the roof. This is a deliberate, brilliant design. The peat smoke is not a nuisance, it is a preservative. It kills insects, prevents the wood from rotting, and keeps the thatch dry by penetrating every fibre with aromatic, antiseptic tars. The very air you breathe, which feels so heavy and nostalgic to you, is what keeps this entire structure from returning to the earth. This is the anatomy of resilience. Every element of the house serves multiple purposes, a hallmark of a society that can afford the luxury of singular utility. The same thatch that keeps the family dry in the winter will, at the end of its life, be removed, heavily impregnated with soot and peat, ash, and spread over the fields as a potent, nitrogen-rich fertilizer. The house itself is a part of the agricultural cycle. It is a machine for living that feeds the land, that feeds the family. But consider the fragility of this design in the face of political upheaval. The British military planners of the mid-8th century looked at these hovels and saw wretched hovels. They missed the genius of the engineering because it didn't align with their vision of what a civilized home should look like, a home with chimneys, glass windows, and rigid, squared, off rooms. They saw the smoke and the earth as signs of backwardness, failing to understand that they were looking at a system optimized for extreme independence. To destroy the Black House was not just destroy a building, it was destroy the material basis for the Highlanders' autonomy. As you sit here, the smoke curls lazily around the central beam, a testament to the house's internal respiration. You are sitting inside a living organism. The house breathes, it sweats, it protects, and it nourishes. It is a monument to the idea that true security is found not in the thickness of a castle wall or the height of a fortress, but in the harmony between one's shelter and the environment. This resilience is what the coming century will try to erase, replacing it with standardized, grid-aligned settlements that break the connection between the dweller and the earth. For now, however, the house holds. The stone remains cold, the peat remains warm, and the roof remains tight against the sky. You are protected by 1,000 years of architectural evolution, an intricate, silent, and deeply human mastery of the wild. If you shift your focus just slightly, rough, hewn, wooden partition that separates the living area from the rest of the house, you can sense the presence of the buyer. It is not a separate building, it a shared space. The cattle, the lifeblood of the Highland family, share this structure, separated from the sleeping quarters only by a thin wool of timber and stone. In the deep, bitter heart of winter, this arrangement is the only reason the family survives. The body heat of the cattle acts as a natural furnace, a radiant warmth that permeates the earth-packed walls and takes the sharp, dangerous edge off the freezing Highland air. There is a profound, almost primal intimacy in this coexistence. The low, rhythmic breathing of the beasts is the background music of the house. You hear the occasional scrape of a hoof against the floor, the soft shifting of hay, and the heavy, contented sighs of animals that are as much a part of the household as any human member. In Nenton 4-5, this is not considered a tea or primitive, as the urban-minded observers from the south would claim. It is instead the height of practical, empathetic survival. The animals are the family's wealth, their insurance policy against starvation, and their companions in the long, dark months of the storm season. Think of the psychological landscape this creates. There is no hierarchical distance between the human and the beast. There is only a shared struggle. The children grow up hearing the lullabies of their mothers and the rhythmic chewing of the cattle. This teaches them from their very first days that the life of the animal is inextricably linked to their own. They understand without ever being told that they must care for the herd as they care for their own kin. The anxiety in the room is palpable. When a calf is born, the joy is shared. This bond is a cornerstone of the Highland identity, a stark contrast to the emerging commercial farming practice that would soon treat animals as mere inventory units. The buyer is a sensory reminder of the cycle of existence. The smell, a rich earthy blend of manure, damp hay and animal musk, is the scent of life itself. It's a sharp grounding smell that serves to remind every inhabitant of the home that they are part of a biological loop. Nothing is wasted here. The waste of the cattle is meticulously gathered to be carried out to the fields, fueling the growth of the next year's crop of oats. It is a closed, self-sustaining loop that defies the wasteful, extractive models of the industrial world currently gaining power in the lowlands. As you sit in the silence, you realize that this shared space is a testament to a different kind of progress, a progress of connection rather than separation. The modern world seeks to insulate us from the realities of the source of our sustenance, pushing the animals to the outskirts and hiding the process of life behind factory walls. Here there is no hiding, Life is raw, immediate and shared. You are breathing the same air as the creatures that sustain you, a constant tactile reminder of your place in the web of existence. In the gathering tensity of the Yenton 4-5 landscape, this house acts as a fortress of empathy, where the humanity of the people is reflected back to them in the eyes of their herd. The sentinel of the byre stands watch, a quiet, breathing testament to a life lived in total, unwavering communion with the natural world. Look closer at how the household arranges itself within the single expansive room. There are no private chambers, no doors to shut out the world of one's kin. The geometry of kinship is defined by proximity. The elders and the children occupy their zones within the same atmospheric bubble of the hearth. This lack of architectural privacy is not a lack of respect. It is a declaration of total, uncompromising transparency. In Wenton 4-5, to be a member of this household is to be an open book to those you live with. There is no such thing as a secret life here. This layout creates a unique social resilience. When a crisis strikes, a crop failure, a harsh winter or the distant rumbling of a military campaign, it is felt by everyone simultaneously. The stress is not siloed, it is shared, negotiated and managed collectively. You can see it in the way the woman positions herself. She is the pivot point. She tends the fire, manages the spinning, and keeps a constant, gentle watch over the children. Her body language is a silent, constant communication of stability. Even in the silence, she has maintained the social order of the house, ensuring that the needs of the gramber near the wall are met with the same diligence as the needs of the infant by the fire. The authorities in London viewed this living arrangement with suspicion, often mischaracterizing the Highland clan system as a hotbed of intrigue and archaic insubordination. They could not conceive of a society where loyalty was based on blood and proximity rather than contracts and statutes. In this Brackhouse, loyalty is cultivated in the shared air, the shared heat, and the shared labour. It is a system designed to be impossible to bribe and incredibly difficult to divide. When an outside comes to demand taxes or loyalty to the crown, they are not just dealing with an individual. They are confronting a unified singular organism of kinship. Think about the implications of this for the Highland spirit. Each person here has a role that is defined by the family's survival. The young learn by observation, not by instruction. They watch the man as he sharpens his knife. They watch the woman as she tends the fire. They watch the elder as she recites the histories. They are absorbing the code of their culture through the very geometry of the room. It is a slow, immersive education in what it means to be a Highlander. This is the antithesis of the individualistic, fragmented life that the upcoming industrial age will demand. As you observe the way they exist in this shared space, you realize that the house is a training ground for the soul. They are learning how to be part of a whole, how to balance their own desires with the needs of the collective, and how to find peace in the presence of others. The modern world, the one moving toward private rooms and solitary work, is losing this capacity for effort community. But here, in the heart of Wenton 4-5, the geometry is perfect. Every person knows their place, every person knows their worth, and every person knows that they are never, ever alone. The architecture of their lives is built on a foundation of mutual reliance, a structure so robust that no storm, no matter how fierce, can easily break the bonds of a family that lives as one. As the day deepens, take a moment to look past the fire and the people, and focus on the objects that populate the periphery of the room. A wooden bowl hand, carved with a worn smooth rim, an iron pot, pitted and darkened by years of contact with the peat fire, a woven basket, its willow strands tightened by countless hours of use. These are not merely things, they are the material archive of a family's history. In the Highlands of N1045, every object is a biography of effort. They carry the marks of their creators and the stories of those who maintained them. Consider the wooden spoon near the hearth. It was likely carved by the man of the house during the long dark hours of a winter's night, using a branch gathered from the nearest grove. It is perfectly balanced to the grip of a hand that has worked the fields for 20 years. It is not mass-produced. It is personalized, intended to last for a generation. When it inevitably cracks, it will not be discarded. It will be bound with leather or resin, repaired with a care that borders on reverence. This is an ethic of long life, a direct stinging rebuttal to the emerging culture of disposability that the industrial South will soon champion. These objects dictate the pace of life because they are finite and hard. When they are treated with a profound, quiet gravity, there is no such thing as careless in this room. To drop a vessel is to lose a piece of one's labour. To lose a tool is to handicap the family's ability to survive. This scarcity instills a peculiar kind of mindfulness. Every action, from the way the water is scooped to the way the fire is tended, is choreographed to avoid waste. It is a slow, deliberate choreography that defines the character of the Highlander, disciplined, observant, and deep respectful of the resource they are given. But there is a melancholy quality to these objects as well. As you look at the heavy iron tongs, you recognize that they are not just tools, they are heirlooms, having served the family for decades. They represent a legacy that is under siege. As the political tides turn in N1045, and the British government begins its push to pacify the Highlands, these objects are at risk of being lost to fire, looting, or the desperate act of abandonment during flight. Each item here is a piece of a puzzle, a component of a lifestyle that requires specific equipment and specific skills to exist. Once the tools are scattered, the lifestyle begins to evaporate. The woman reaches out to adjust the iron pot, her hand moving with a familiarity that transcends ownership. She is not just using a pot, she is participating in a ritual that links her to the mother who taught her to cook, and the grandmother who taught her the value of the hearth. The objects are the anchors of this continuity. They prove that the family has been here, that they have survived, and that they have cultivated a world of their own design. As you sit here, the archaeology of the living, you see not just an inventory of household goods, but a tangible manifestation of a culture's values. In the quiet shimmer of the iron and the grain of the worn wood, you can feel the weight of a history that is held together by the simple, stubborn refusal to let these things, and the way of life they represent, be forgotten. The hearth is the pulsating heart of the Blackhouse, the singular point around which all Highland existence orbits. Unlike a modern fireplace, meant for aesthetic warmth, this central fire is an architectural necessity and a social manifesto. It has no chimney because the smoke is the house's silent guardian. As it rises, it saturates the thatch, weaving a protective layer of carbon and creosote that seals the roof against the relentless Highland rain. To sit here is to sit inside the anatomy of a living, breathing defense system. Watch the way the fire behaves. It does not crackle with the frantic, snapping energy of pine. It smoulders with the deep, dense, and rhythmic intensity of peat. This is the earth, fuel harvested from the bog, compressed by millennia of decay, and now surrendered to the flame. There is a profound, meditative silence in the way peat burns, a steady and aromatic release of heat that seems to mirror the glacial pace of life in the glen. In the N1045, this fire is the absolute measure of wealth. A household with a well, stock peat stack, is a household that will see the spring. But beyond the physics of heat, there is the philosophy of the fire. The hearth is the site of the coir anteni, the rite of the fire. It is the place where legal disputes were traditionally settled, where oaths were sworn, and where the sacredness of the family unit was reaffirmed. If you were to look at the hearth during the long winter nights, you would see it as a light-filled altar. It is where the stories of the ancestors are recited, where the genealogical lines are traced, and where the moral code of the clan is transmitted to the young. It is the classroom of the Highlander. The British military observers who ventured into these glens rarely understood this. They saw the central fire and the lack of a chimney as a sign of savagery, a mark of a people not yet refined by the architectural advancements of the Enlightenment. They viewed the smoke, stained walls as a blight to be scrubbed away. They failed to realize that the hearth was not just a tool for cooking, it was the foundation of a social contract. To extinguish the fire is to break the contract. To force the people away from the hearth is to dismantle the very structure of their society. As you sit in the corner, feeling the gentle dry heat radiating against your skin, you realize that the fire is a mirror. It reflects the resilience of the people who tend it. It is never allowed to die completely. The embers are banked every night, buried under ash to be coaxed back to life at the first light of dawn. This act a profound daily ritual, a promise that, despite the political storms, the famine years, or the encroaching pressure of a hostile crown, the light will remain. The fire is the constant. As long as the peat glows, the family persists. As long as the family persists, the culture survives. The hearth is the silent sentinel of the Highlands, and you are currently basking in the warmth of a history that is refusing to surrender. The serenity inside the Blackhouses and has always been a fragile miracle. As the sun climbs higher, the ambient sounds of the glen change. The distant, rhythmic barking of a sheepdog or the call of a curlew now seems punctuated by something else, a low, metallic vibration that does not belong to the natural world. It is the sound of steel, shod boots on gravel, the distinct jarring clatter of muskets being shouldered, and the clipped, authoritarian voices of men who do not belong to this soil. The British patrols have been traversing these passes with increasing frequency, their presence a cold, sharp reminder that the relative autonomy of the Highlands is being systematically dismantled. For the inhabitants of this house, this is the moment where the internal world must navigate the external crisis. The man who only moments ago was tending to the simple, honest work of the field now carries him with a guarded stillness. He knows that the soldiers are not searching for rebels alone. They are searching for signs of non-compliance, for they, hidden stores of grain, the illicit distillation of spirits, or the secret gatherings where clan loyalty is reaffirmed. Every interaction with a patrol is a dangerous dance of evasion. To appear too defiant is to invite destruction. To appear too submissive is to betray the very honour that defines his clan. You, from your vantage point in the shadows, feel the atmosphere in the room thicken. It is as if the air itself has become pressurized. The woman moves with a heightened, nervous precision, her eyes frequently flickering toward the door. The laughter of the children has died down, replaced by a watchful silence. This is the politicized domesticity of Enden 4-5. The home is no longer just a place of rest. It is an outpost in a war that is being fought on both the battlefield and the hearth. The Crown's policy of pacification is not merely about soldiers on the march. It is about the destruction of the Highland way of life by making the act of living it physically and economically impossible. This encroaching force represents a totalizing vision of the state that demands standardization. To them, the Highland home is a disorganized, chaotic entity that must be forced in the mould of the modern, taxable and controllable British subject. They do not care for the genealogy of the clan, the oral history of the songs, or the sacredness of the threshold. They care for the map, the census, and the submission to the king. The tension you feel is the collision between two incompatible concepts of existence, one rooted in the deep, ancient, and localized connection to the land, and the other rooted in the expansive, rigid, and abstract power of the nascent British Empire. As the sounds of the patrol pass closer, the heavy tread of men who do not know the language of the ground, you realize that you are witnessing the death of a 1,000-year-old era. The beauty of this house, the warmth of its fire, and the dignity of its occupants are all standing in the path of relentless tide. The history books will call this a suppression of a rebellion, but sitting here in the smoke and the shadows, you understand it as something far more profound. It is the beginning of a long, slow erasure. The sentinel of the hearth remains vigilant, but the world outside is darkening, and the storm that has been brewing over the peaks is finally beginning to descend upon the glen. The sounds of the patrol have receded, leaving behind a silence that is far heavier than before. It is not the peaceful silence of the early morning. It is a tense, expectant hush. In the aftermath of their passing, the man has returned to the house, his face a mask of iron, willed restraint. He does not speak of what he saw on the road, but the way he carefully bars the door, a motion that is usually reserved for the height of a winter storm, tells you everything you need to know. The Highlands are being partitioned, and the maps of the Crown-appointed surveyors are beginning to have real, world, violent consequences. This is the hidden agony of N1045, the slow, agonizing realization that belonging to a place is no longer a guaranteed right, but a carrier privilege. As the woman continues her work, her movements are no longer just routine, they are now imbued with the weight of potential loss. She touches the wall, the heavy stones that have sheltered generations, with a possessive, grieving intensity. She is calculating the cost of an evacuation that she prays will never come. What can be carried, what must be left behind? These are not mere logistical questions, they are questions of soul, deep sacrifice. To leave a brackhouse is not like leaving a modern home. It is not about packing boxes. It is about leaving a piece of one's identity in the earth. The hearth, the central point of their history, cannot be transported. The stones, smoothed by the passage of centuries, cannot be moved. To leave is to break the continuity of the oral archive, to silence the songs of the ancestors, and to step into a future that is, for the first time, completely untethered from the land. The British military strategy of burning homesteads to enforce submission was not just a tactic of war. It was an act of cultural erasure designed to make return impossible. Observe the man as he sits by the fire, his hands idle for the first time all day. He is looking at the fire, but his eyes are fixed on a horizon that you cannot see. He is contemplating the diaspora that is already being whispered about in the glen, the forced migrations that will eventually scatter his kin across the oceans to the colonies. He is a man who defines him by his place in this landscape, and the threat of being ripped from it is a psychic wound that cuts deeper than any blade. The structural resilience of the house, the double, walled insulation, the peat smoke protection is useless against the institutional force now bearing down on the region. You, the witness in the shadows, feel a profound shift in your own understanding. You have been brought here to observe a life of extraordinary dignity and connection, but you are now realizing that this beauty exists within the shadow of its own inevitable sunset. You are witnessing the anatomy of a departure that has not yet happened, but is already being prepared for in the hearts of these people. Yes, but it is a fortress that is becoming a cage. As the shadows lengthen and the light in the room grows dim, the fire's glow takes on a new, urgent significance. It is a flickering rebellion against the encroaching darkness of the coming era. They are still here, and they are still holding on, but the world outside has changed, and the walls of the glen are no longer enough to keep the future at bay. The sun has dipped behind the jagged spine of the mountains, and the glen is rapidly drowning in the violet hues of dusk. Inside, the world has shrunk down to the circle of the hearth once again. You notice that the man has lit the cuinnig, the small improvised lamp fueled by fish oil, not for lack of peat fire, but to cast a wider net of light against the encroaching shadows. It is a subtle gesture of defiance. They are marking their territory, however small and temporary, against the encroaching vastness of an uncertain night. In this hour, the atmosphere shifts from the active labour of the day to the quiet, heavy duty of the vigil. There is a sense of finality to the evening chores. The woman arranges the bedding with a methodical grace that you have come to recognise, a folding of blankets, a smoothing of straw, that feels like the performance of a sacred rite. She is not just preparing for sleep, she is tidying the sanctuary. She is ensuring that if the world ends tonight, it will end in a place of order, dignity and warmth. This is the profound courage of the Highland family, the refusal to let the chaos outside dictate the character of their interior lives. Observe the man again. He sits by the fire, his posture less rigid, more introspective. He is no longer reading the landscape for hazards. He is reflecting on the lineage he represents. He reaches in the deep pockets of his wool coat and pulls out a small carved wooden talisman, a token of the clan, perhaps, or a relic of a grandfather who fought in the previous wars. He turns it over in his calloused fingers, the wood worn to a soft, dark sheen by decades of handling. In the flicker of the hearth, the object seems to glow with the weight of that history. He is holding the connection to the past, anchoring him against the tide of the future. This is the last vigil, a state of mind that has defined the Highlands throughout its history. It is the understanding that one's way of life is under constant threat, yet choosing to live it with full, unapologetic intensity nonetheless. The silence in the room is not empty. It is thick with the weight of stories that haven't been told yet, and memories that are being guarded with silent ferocity. The children are asleep behind the partition, their breathing a steady, rhythmic counterpoint to the crackling of the peat. They are the future, yet they are living in a present that is being squeezed by the machinery of empire. As you watch the firelight dance across the soot-stained rafters, you realize that you are sitting in a chamber of memory. You are witnessing the absolute unwavering resilience of a people who know that their time may be short, but whose spirit is long, stretching back into the misty antiquity of the clans and forward into the enduring resilience of the human soul. The hearth is their fortress, and this night, like all the nights before it, is a victory. They are still here, they are still together. And as long as the embers hold the heat, the story of this house continues to unfold, holding its own against the darkness that presses against the walls. The night has fully claimed the glen, and the world outside the Blackhouse has been reduced to the howling of the wind against the thick stone walls and the occasional, restless movement of the cattle in the byre. Inside, the fire has been banked, the final most vital task of the day. The woman carefully mounds the ash over the glowing peat, stifling the flames to a gentle, pulsing ember. This is the smouldering hearth, a state of splendid animation that will sustain the fire throughout the darkest hours of the night. It is a promise that the heat will persist, that the morning will be met with warmth, and that the cycle will not be broken. As the room settles in the deep, heavy silence of midnight, you become acutely aware of your own presence. You have traversed the entirety of this day with them, from the first light of dawn to the final, guarded embers of the night. You have felt the chill of the morning air, the heat of the hearth, and the subtle rising tension of the world outside. But more than that, you have absorbed the rhythm of their resilience. You have learned that the Highland survival was never about tools, sheep, or stone. It was about the stubborn, defiant act of holding on to one's identity in the face of an eroding world. This is the unseen thread, the intangible continuity that links the inhabitants of this house to the generations that precede them, and eventually to the ones who carry these stories forward. You are now a part of that thread. By witnessing this, by holding these details in your consciousness, you have become a custodian of their memory. History, as it is often taught, is a catalogue of kings, battles, and dates, a skeleton framework of the past. But what you have experienced here is the flesh and blood of that history, the smell of the peat, the weight of the wool, the anxiety in a guarded glance, and the quiet dignity of a family living with grace in the shadow of impending change. Consider tragedy of what is to come. In the years following 24/5, the clearances, the bans on traditional dress, and the suppression of the Gaelic tongue will do their best to unravel this thread. The Blackhouses will be abandoned, the stones will be reclaimed by the moss, and the songs will be hushed. And yet, there is something in the architecture of this life that defies total erasure. The way they have lived, the way they have valued their kinship and their land, remains a template for human endurance. It is a reminder that even when the state, the economy, and the march of progress conspire to dismantle a culture, there is an irreducible core of humanity that remains. As you sit in the dark, the faint orange glow of the banked fire casting long, dancing shadows across the room, you realize that your journey into this moment is coming to a precipice. You have seen the life of the glen in its full unvarnished state. You have understood the political, ecological, and emotional stakes of their existence. The fire still breathes, the house still stands, and the story of this night is etched into the very stones of the glen. You are holding the thread now, a silent participant in a history that refuses to be forgotten. The silence is profound, absolute, and filled with the resonance of 1,000 years of life held securely in the hollow of the dark. The silence of the house has changed. It is no longer just the silence of sleep, but the silence of anticipation. Outside, the night has reached its zenith, and the wind has begun to moan through the crags of the mountain, a low, haunting sound that seems to echo the uncertainty of the coming months. Inside the Black House, the banked fire radiates a pulse of heat that is almost height, like a constant rhythmic reminder that despite the looming dissolution of their world, the present moment remains, for now, sovereign. The man stirs in his sleep, a fleeting movement that betrays the complexity of his dreams. He is likely dreaming of the harvest, of the herd, and of the lineage he is tasked with protecting, images of a world that is already fraying at the edges. The woman beside him lies with the same watchful stillness that she carried throughout the day. They are not victims waiting for the inevitable. They are witnesses to their own history, living the final chapters of an era with a quiet, devastating grace. They have done all that can be done. The work is finished, the fire is banked, and the family is sheltered. You, the observer, are now aware that your role has shifted. You are no longer just an audience to a domestic scene. You are a witness to the profound silent transition of an entire culture. The history of Enton 4-5 will eventually be written by the victors in the halls of London, sanitized and formalized into treaties, maps, and military reports. But that version will lack the sensory truth of this room, the smell of the smouldering peat, the rough texture of the wool, the shared breaths of a family bound by a code that the modern world will categorize as rebellion and backwardness. There is a sense of impending weight in the air, the pressure of a history that is about to fracture. The Highland way of life, with its intricate communal tendencies and its deep-seated ecological wisdom, is on the precipice of being swept away by the brutal, efficient logic of the emerging industrial age. The stones of this house, which have held the warmth of generations, will soon be cold and abandoned. The songs, which carried the genealogies of the clan, will fade in the mist of the hills, waiting for someone to listen again. Yet in this dark, quiet room, the defiance is absolute. By existing, by maintaining the hearth, and by continuing to be who they are, these people are asserting a reality that no policy or decree can truly touch. They are the bedrock upon which the story of the Highlands is built. As the first, faint suggestion of dawn begins to grey the edges of the thatch, the house seems to hold its breath. It is a moment of suspension, a delicate balance between the continuity of the past and the violent arrival of the future. The fire continues to pulse, the embers glowing like a secret, waiting for the hand that will coax them back into a flame. The story is poised at the threshold, ready to cross in the light of a new and unforgiving day. The dawn has arrived, but it is not a finality, it is a transition. The grey light that filters through the thatch does not illuminate an end, but rather the beginning of a long, quiet labour. The woman's hands move to the fire, but there is no grief in the motion. There is only the rhythmic, practiced discipline of someone who understands that survival is an act of defiance. She clears the cold ash from the night before, revealing the glowing heart of the peat, and carefully feeds it the fuel that will sustain the day. This is not the end of the cycle, it is the renewal of the promise. The man stands at the threshold, his gaze fixed not on the shadow of the mountains, but on the path that winds down into the glen. He knows the political tides are shifting, he hears the distant rumours of change, but he also knows that the land remains, and the responsibility to the hearth remains. He does not see him as a relic of a dying past, but as a link in a chain that has weathered storms far greater than this. He turns back to the room, his eyes meeting yours, a fleeting moment of recognition between the observer and the observed, before he steps out into the crisp, biting air to continue the work of the day. You realize now that the last vigil was never about waiting for the end. It was about preparing for the continuation. The history of the Highlands will not be erased simply because a new order seeks to impose itself. It will be carried, hidden, and transformed. The stories will move from the hearth to the new frontiers. The songs will be hummed in the bustling ports of the colonies. And the resilience learned in this Blackhouse will become the foundation for everything that follows. The unseen thread is not fraying, it is lengthening, stretching across the ocean and into the fabric of a world yet to be born. This house is not just a building of stone and earth, it is a portable sanctuary. What has been nurtured here, the kinship, the deep ecological intimacy, and the unwavering dignity, is not confined by these walls. As the family move through their day, the strength of the hearth travels with them. You watch them, and you realize that they are not victims of history, but its architects. Even as they face the uncertainty of the future, they do so with a grounded, stubborn clarity. They are the keepers of a light that, once kindled, refuses to be extinguished. So you do not leave them to a tragedy, you leave them to their ongoing journey. The Brackhouse remains a sturdy witness to the resilience of a people who have mastered the art of existing in total harmony with the wild. The smoke still rises, a thin silver ribbon against the sky, marking the position of a defiance that is quiet, enduring, and profoundly human. As you watch them move about their chores, the world outside feels less like an encroaching threat and more like a vast and folding horizon. The story is not concluding, it is merely shifting its scope, expanding its reach, and preparing for the next, inevitable chapter of a history that is, above all else, alive. The man has stepped beyond the threshold, and for the first time you are walking with him through the glen. To an outsider, this landscape is a wild, rugged expanse of heather and grey stone. But to him, as he walks, his eyes do not scan the horizon for aesthetic beauty, they scan for signs. He points almost imperceptibly to a cairn of stone's half, hidden by gorse. It is not merely a marker of a path, it is a monument to event from 3 generations ago, a skirmish, a boundary agreement, or perhaps the site where winter storms once claimed a wandering flock. The entire valley is a mnemonic device. The names he gives to the crags and the streams are not just labels, they are stories of endurance. He speaks of the crying stream, not because the water sounds like weeping, but because of a story told to him by his grandpa about a mother's hope and loss. This is the language of the landscape. The land here is not a passive backdrop to human activity, it is a repository of their history. The way they graze their cattle is informed by the oral records of where the grass grows most nurturing, dense in the early spring, a practice handed down through centuries of observation. You realize that this connection to the land is precisely why the encroaching powers find them so difficult to control. An empire functions on standardized abstract ownership, but how do you conquer a people who feel that the very soil beneath their feet is composed of the deeds and wisdom of their ancestors? They don't just live on the land, they are an extension of its history, even as the modern world tries to impose a new, rigid geometry upon this place, measuring, dividing, and taxing. The people move through it with a fluid, intuitive grace that completely bypasses the official records. The man stops by a low stone wall that divides the grazing land. He spends a few moments repairing a section that the wind and rain have eroded. It is a quiet, meditative task. There is no urgency in his hands, only the steady, rhythmic assurance of someone who intends to be here for a very long time. This wool, like the house he left behind, is a declaration of presence. He is reinforcing the structure of his world, one stone at a time, indifferent to the distant, bureaucratic machinery that dreams of redrawing these lines. As you look around, you see the glen not as a place of isolation, but as a place of profound dialogue. The man is in constant, silent communication with the environment. The wind, the slope of the hill, the quality of the light, everything is information, and everything is a signal. This is a life lived in a state of high, sophisticated alertness. The storm that you feel brewing on the horizon does not frighten him. He reads it like he reads the stone walls, acknowledge it as a part of the seasonal cycle of the world. The jay is unfolding, the work is beginning, and the story of the glen is being written not in ink, but in the simple, deliberate steps of a man moving across his own history. The work today is not solitary. As you follow the man deeper into the glen, you encounter others emerging from their own brackhouses, men and women, their silhouettes sharp against the pale morning light, all converging toward a common pasture. This is the time of the shearing, and the atmosphere is thick with the anticipation of collective labour. There is an immediate palpable shift in the air. The heavy, contemplative silence of the individual household is replaced by a low, humming vibration of communal energy. You watch as they arrange them. It is a dance of efficiency that has been perfected over centuries. The youngest children stand ready with bundles of twine. The elders sit in the shade of a rock wall to sort and grade the wool. And the shearers move with a speed that is almost liquid, one precise, confident motion after another. There is no need for loud commands. Everyone knows their place in this human machine. This is a rhythm of sharing that goes beyond the task at hand. While their hands are busy with the fleece, their voices are busy with the work of weaving the social fabric. Stories are traded as quickly as the wool is bundled. You hear fragments of gossip, news of the neighbouring glens, and, more importantly, the recitation of lineages. As they work, they updating the collective memory of the clan. If a family has struggled through the winter, it is discussed here, and solutions are quietly proposed, not as charity, but as the mutual obligation of kin. You are witnessing the social insurance of the Highlands in real time. In this circle, no one is truly alone, because everyone is tethered to the welfare of their neighbour. The British military officers, should they appear on the ridge, would see only peasant shearing sheep, a trivial, rustic scene. They would never comprehend the invisible architecture of what is happening. They see labourers. The Highlander sees a living, breathing network of loyalty. Every snip of the shears is an act of defiance against system that wants them to be atomized individuals, easily broken and moved like chess pieces on a board. By working together, they are maintaining the structural integrity of their culture. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the pile of wool grows, a tangible representation of their collective survival for the coming winter. The man, who only hours ago was the guardian of his own hearth, is now just one pulse in this larger, stronger height. You realize that this is the true secret of the glen. It is not the thickness of the brackhouse walls that protects them, but the density of these connections. They are creating a bulwark of human solidarity that for the moment stands firm against the outside world. The work continues steady and unending, as the glen echoes with the song of labour, a melody of belonging that refuses to fade. As the shearing slows, the energy does not dissipate, it migrates. A woman begins a low rhythmic chant, a walking song, and soon the rhythm of the work is perfectly synchronized to the cadence of her voice. This is the architecture of the voice. In the absence of massive libraries or government archives, the people have built their history in the air. The songs are the vessels. They contain the history of the clans, the maps of the stars, the medicinal properties of local herbs, and the moral geography of their society. You observe the rapt attention of the youth. They are not just listening to a melody, they are performing an act of downloading. Every syllable, every inflection, and every retition is designed to anchor this information deep in their memory. The British authorities often mock the Gaelic tongue as a barbarous or primitive dialect, failing to realize that it is a highly sophisticated, high-density storage format for an entire civilization. To suppress the language is not just to silence a way of speaking, it is to delete the operating system of the Highland culture. The man beside you hums along, his voice a gravelly bass that harmonizes with the soaring notes of the women. He is participating in the active maintenance of their reality. As he sings, he is reminded of he is where he stands, and to whom he owes his loyalty. This is a form of cognitive resistance. While the world outside attempts to classify them through censuses and land deeds, They are defining them through the resonance of their own voices. The song is a border that no soldier can cross. It is a wall that no tax collector can breach. You realize that this acoustic lexic is a sanctuary because the songs are sung in the field, in the byre, and by the hearth. They are everywhere. They are an omnipresent, invisible architecture that holds the community together. Even if the Blackhouses were to be emptied, the songs would remain in the glens, carried by the wind and the breath of the people who refuse to forget. The architecture of the voice is designed to be indestructible precisely because it does not require stone or parchment to exist. As the song reaches its crescendo and then tapers off in the sighing of the wind, you feel the weight of what is being preserved. It is a fragile, ethereal archive, yet it has survived for centuries. The people here understand that they are the carriers of a flame that must not flicker. They work, they sing, and they continue, their voices weaving a tapestry of identity that is as resilient as the heather beneath their feet. The glen is alive with the sound of a history that refuses to be written by anyone other than those who live it. The shearing is over, but the work of the day is far from done. You watch as the men and women gather the scraps of wool, the short, coarse fibres that were caught on the gorse bushes or left behind on the stone floor. Nothing is discarded. In the geometry of Highland life, waste is not just an inefficiency, it is a moral failure. Every object, every remnant of raw material must be integrated back in the cycle of use. This is a mastery of micromanagement that would baffle the industrialized mind, which views resource as infinite and disposable. Think of the way they treat the land's bounty. When they butcher an animal, every part is designated for a purpose. The hide for footwear, the bone for tools, the fat for fuel. Nothing remains to be carried away by the scavengers. This is not just a survival tactic born of poverty, it is a philosophy of total utility. They view them as stewards of a finite loop. If they take from the glen, they must return the equivalent value in labour, care, or byproduct. This ensures that the landscape, while harsh, remains productive year after year. This scarcity creates a specific aesthetic of cleanliness and order. The interior of the Blackhouse, though smoke-stained, is never cluttered. There is a place for everything, and everything is kept in its place. The tools are kept sharp and oiled, the stored grain is protected from damp, and the peat is stacked with architectural precision to ensure airflow and dryness. You observe the man sharpening his blade, a slow, meditative process. He is not just preparing the tool, he is extending its life. By maintaining the tool, he is effectively expanding the resource available to his family. As you look around, you realize that this geometry of scarcity dictates the rhythm of their daily life. Every movement is calculated. They do not walk necessarily. They do not speak without cause. They do not expend energy without a clear objective. This is a life of extreme, honed efficiency. In a world where the margin between having enough and starving is thin as a winter frost, this disciplined focus is their primary weapon. It is the invisible gear, work that keeps their civilization running when all the odds are against them. The British military, with their long supply chains and heavy, cumbersome baggage trains, view this small-scale precision with total incomprehension. They look at the Highlanders' simple life and see poverty. They do not see the sophisticated intelligence required to live in complete alignment with the resource of the earth. As the evening begins to cool and the work of sorting the wool nears its end, you see the people posing, satisfied. They have squeezed every ounce of value from the day. They have made Joe, they have thrived, and they have done so with a quiet, efficient grace that makes the sprawling. wasteful excess of the world beyond the mountains seem not like advancement, but like a dangerous, unravelling chaos. As evening approaches, the man takes a path that leads away from the communal pastures and toward a cluster of ancient moss-covered standing stones at the edge of the glen. He walks with a different gait here, slower, more deliberate, as if he is treading on hallowed ground. You realize that for him, the landscape is not merely a collection of features, it is a repository of time. The soil beneath his boots is composed of the dust of those who came before, and the stones he passes are the silent witnesses to centuries of clan history. This is the memory of the soil. He stops by one of the larger stones and runs his hand over its lichen-covered surface. He does not treat it as a geological curiosity. He treats it with the reverence one might offer an elder. In this culture, history is not kept in books that can be burned or censored. It is etched into the geography. Every notable death, every birth, and every turning point for the clan is marked by a feature in the landscape. To walk through this glen is to read an open book, one that is accessible only to those who have been taught the language of the landmarks. The British surveyors, with their brass instruments and precise geometric grids, are attempting to overrate this memory. They want to turn the glen into a productive asset, measurable, taxable, and interchangeable with any other piece of land in the empire. They see a commodity, he sees a living genealogy. You feel a sharp pang of awareness regarding the clash here is not just about political power or economic systems, it is a conflict of reality itself. One side operates on the abstraction of space, the other on the deep layered resonance of place. He begins to speak, not to you but to the air, his voice low and rhythmic, reminiscent of the chants you heard earlier. He is reciting the names of the dead who are said to be buried near this site. It is a roll call of continuity. By speaking their names, he is anchoring them to the present. He is ensuring that even as the world outside threatens to sweep away their way of life, the memory of these people remains rooted in the very earth that sustains the glen. This is an act of spiritual maintenance, as vital to his people as the tending of the fire. As the sun begins to set, the light hits the standing stones at an angle that makes them seem to pulse with a faint inner luminescence. The man remains for a long moment, a solitary figure against the vastness of the darkening hills. You understand now that he is the steward of this memory. As long as he remembers the sniveling of these stones, the link between the past and the present remains unbroken. The landscape holds the record, and he is its living reader. The storm may come, the soldiers may march, but the soil remembers. And as long as someone is here to listen to it, the glen will never truly belong to anyone else. Back in the Blackhouse, the evening meal is simple, a pottage of oats and greens, but the atmosphere is charged with a new quiet intensity. You watch the children. They have spent the day not just playing, but observing. You see it in the way the youngest girl mimics her mother's hands as she mends a piece of fabric, and in the way the boy watches the man clean his tools with an almost reverent focus. They are not merely learning tasks, they are learning the temperament of survival. They are watching how their parents navigate the anxiety of the times with a steady, unflinching gaze. This is the hidden education of the Highlands. While the world beyond the peaks debates laws and territories, these children are being trained in the art of endurance. They learn that identity is a heavy, precious object to be carried. You realize that they are the vessels into which the memory of the soil, the rhythm of the songs, and the geometry of the hearth are being poured. They will not inherit the glen as it currently exists. The maps will be redrawn, the clan structures will be dismantled, but they will inherit the spirit that allows for the preservation of self under pressure. There is a poignant beauty in their innocence. They do not fully understand the soldiers, the surveyors, or the existential threat that hangs over their home like a winter storm. Yet they possess a deep, instinctive understanding of the value of their environment. They move through the Blackhouse with a sense of belonging that is total and absolute. To them, the smoke, stained rafters are not a sign of poverty, they are the boundaries of their universe. This sense of security, built on the strength of their parents' character, is the greatest gift they will ever receive. The man looks at them. For a moment the iron-willed restraint in his face softens. It is not sadness, but a fierce, protective resolve. He knows he cannot guarantee them the safety of the land, but he can provide them with the internal strength to survive wherever they may end up. He is sowing seeds that will grow long after the house has been reclaimed by the moss. This is the ultimate act of defiance, to raise a generation that knows who they are, regardless of the land they walk upon. As the candle flickers and the shadows grow long, the children finally succumb to sleep, curled together near the hearth. The house is quiet, but it is a fertile quiet. You sense that even though the era is nearing its end, the legacy is being successfully transferred. They are the seeds of tomorrow, carry, overs from an ancient world, preparing to bloom in the unfamiliar fields of the future. The thread of history is not breaking. It is merely being passed to new, younger hands, ready to weave the next pattern in a story that refuses to be forgotten. The night has grown deep, and the wind outside has turned it a rhythmic, mournful howl. Yet inside, the hearth remains the focal point of all things. The man and woman sit with their children, not with the busy energy of the day, but with a deliberate, solemn focus. This is the covenant of the hearth. In these moments, they are not just sharing a meal or warmth. They are reciting the unspoken agreements that bind them to their ancestry and to each other. They are reinforcing the boundaries of their collective identity against the chaos that threatens to dissolve them. The man reaches out to touch the heavy soot, blackened stone of the hearth, a gesture you have seen him repeat many times, but now it carries a weight of finality. He speaks, his voice a low, steady murmur that barely carries over the crackle of the peat. He is not lecturing, he is reminiscing about the ancestor who built this house, and the generations who kept it warm through wars, famines, and the relentless pressure of time. He is framing their existence not as a series of isolated events, but as a continuous, unbroken narrative of resilience. You observe the woman, who listens with an intensity that matches his own. She is the bridge, the one who ensures that the rhythm of the songs and the craft of the home are woven in the very nerves of their children. She is teaching them that their dignity is not an external condition granted by the crown, but an internal choice that they must guard with their lives. They are not merely surviving the encroachment of the state, they are actively preserving the sovereignty of the hearth. This is a silent, unshakable agreement that no external force can truly invalidate. The children, though tired, lean in, absorbing the resonance of the stories. You realize that they are receiving something far more powerful than words. They are receiving the rhythm of their survival. They are being taught how to maintain their composure when the world demands their panic, and how to hold on to their identity when the world demands their assimilation. This is the most profound act of resistance in the Highlands, the refusal to lose oneself, even when one loses everything else. As the fire pulses one last time, before being banked for the final hours of the night, the room feels like an island of profound, deliberate integrity. The storm outside may be raging, the surveyors may be drawing their lines, and the armies may be on the march, but in this room there is a peace that transcends the circumstances. They have made their covenant. They have acknowledged the weight of their inheritance and the necessity of their endurance. The flame is low, but it is steady, reflecting the quiet, fierce resolve of people who have decided that they will not be erased. The story is moving toward its conclusion, not because they are defeated, but because they have fulfilled the duty they were born to perform. The dawn is breaking, but it is not the light of a new day for the world they once knew. The grey mist clings to the hillsides like a shroud, and the wind has died down into an expectant, heavy stillness. You sit in the corner of the Blackhouse, observing the man as he stands by the door. He is not bracing for a fight, he is simply waiting. He has finished his work, he has kept the hearth, and he has passed the stories to the next generation. He has done what a man is meant to do in the cycle of his people. The woman is beside him, her hand resting on the wooden frame of the doorway. Her eyes scan the glen one last time, not with the panic of the hunted, but with the calm assessment of an architect surveying a structure that has served its purpose. They know the reality. The lines on the government maps are moving closer, the structures of the clan are fracturing, and the life they have lived within these walls is transitioning into something new, something untethered. Yet the air in the room is not heavy with defeat, it is strangely, powerfully light. You realize that this is the paradox of their survival, by accepting that their world must change. They have effectively transcended the limitations of the physical structure around them. The Blackhouse, with its thick stones and thatch roof, is now just a shell. The real inheritance, the stories, the rhythm of their resilience, and the internal dignity they have forged is already being carried out the door, safely tucked away in the memories of the children who are just now stirring from their sleep. They are not leaving. They are expanding beyond the glen. There is a profound, quiet dignity in this transition. They are walking to an uncertain future with the same steady, deliberate gait that they have used to traverse the Highlands for generations. They are taking nothing that cannot be carried, and leaving behind everything that cannot be destroyed. The political, economic and military forces that seek to erase them are focused on the land, the assets, and the formal structures. They are focused on the truth of their humanity, which is a far more durable and a far more dangerous currency. As the sun finally clears the peaks and spills a pale, cold gold across the glen, the man turns to you, his eyes reflecting the vast open space of the mountains. He does not see you, of course, but for a split second your gazes lock. It is a moment of profound acknowledgement. The fire in the hearth has been allowed to fade, not for lack of care, but because its task is complete. The threshold has been crossed. They are ready to step in the world that is waiting for them, carrying the embers of the glen in their hearts, wherever the tide of history may take them next. The door of the Blackhouse creaks open, and the cold, sharp air of the glen rushes in, meeting the lingering scent of peat, smoke and warmth. You watch as they step out, one by one into the vast, unforgiving light of a new era. There is no backward glance, no lingering tremor of hesitation. They carry no heavy burdens. The most vital parts of their world are held internally. Woven in the cadence of their speech, the strength of their kinship, and the unyielding quietude of their spirits. As you remain in the doorway, the structure behind you begins to feel less like a dwelling and more like a shell. The stones, stacked with such precision by hands long turned to dust, have done their duty. They have sheltered the history of a people, and now, as the wind begins to pick up, The house seems to settle deeper into the earth, return to the hillside from which it was born. The cycle of the Brackhouse is complete, but the cycle of the people is merely accelerating. Look out toward the horizon. You see them moving down the path, their figures growing smaller against the expanse of the moor, yet their presence feels more expansive than ever. They are the carriers of fire that cannot be contained by maps, decrees, or the passage of years. This is the enduring ember, a light that was nurtured in the hearth of the glen, and is now being carried into the furthest corners of the world. Wherever they walk, the glen walks with them. Whenever they speak, the songs of their ancestors will find a voice. The story is not ending, it is being released. History, in its cold, objective form, may record the clearance of these glens, the scattering of the clans, and the silencing of the hearths. But that is only the surface of the truth. Beneath the recorded events lies this persistent human resonance, a testament to a way of living that prioritized the dignity of the soul over the demands of empire. They have succeeded in the most difficult task of all. They have reserved their humanity in the face of an impossible transition. As you stand on the threshold, the final echoes of their footsteps fade in the rustle of the heather. The glen lies before you, silent once more, yet it is a silence filled with the vibration of everything you have witnessed. The fire has gone out, but the warmth remains. The house is empty, but the memory is full. You have held the thread, and now, as you prepare to move on, you realize that you are no longer just an observer. You are part of the transmission. The fire of the Highlands has found a new home here, in your understanding, and in the story that will continue to be told as long as there is someone left to listen to the embers. Sleepy History with Benedict is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.